Passenger who died when a Singapore Airlines flight between London and Singapore ran into severe turbulence has been revealed exclusively by The Times as Jeffrey Kitchen. The Boeing 777 was forced to divert to Bangkok, where it made an emergency landing at 3:45 local time. Ben Clatworthy is The Times travel and transport correspondent. Welcome back, Ben. Again, quite a horrifying experience.
Indeed, passengers on board that Singapore Airways flight bound for Singapore, recalling the horrific moment that the plane plunged thousands of feet, sending those that hadn't had a chance to reattach their seatbelt flying upwards, hitting their heads on the overhead lockers with such a force that it brought down the oxygen masks with them. Pictures from on board the plane and eyewitness accounts said that there was water everywhere, pools of blood, passengers screaming in the wake of that terrifying incident.
Absolutely frightening. Now, a plummet like that in a jet mid-flights, to the point that people hit their heads on the seating overhead, injure themselves. A man sadly dies of a heart attack. This is a most uncommon occurrence. There's to be an investigation. I think Singapore Airlines are carrying out an investigation. What will that investigation be looking at?
What they'll be looking at is the weather and what the pilots knew at that time. Should there have been a diversion earlier? Did the turbulence show up on the radar correctly? Were they flying into the head of a storm that they could have avoided? Now, meteorologists say the weather was very bad at the time of the accident. But what's interesting is speaking to passengers who were on the plane, they say that it had been very calm up until the point that the seatbelt sign was turned on. There had been a few lumps and bumps, but nothing that concerned them. The seatbelt sign was then turned on, and it was while the crew were making the announcement saying that the captain had turned the seatbelt sign on that the jet plummeted down these thousands of feet. So those people who hadn't yet put their seatbelts on were the ones who were thrown from their seats, many of them onto the floor. Now, the passengers that we've spoken to said that those that did have their seatbelts on are largely okay. Those that didn't are the ones who have been injured, along with the crew. We know one member of crew is in hospital. Others did sustain injuries. They were just about to start their jobs. They were working in the galleys preparing breakfast trolleys to start the economy class meal service. They were about to begin checking passengers had put their seatbelts on when they too were obviously thrown from their feet. One passenger said they were stoic in continuing to treat passengers while tending to their own wounds at the same time.
Ben Clatworthy, thank you for bringing us the latest on that story.
Good evening, John.
Oh, but this sounds like a terrifying experience. Tell us all you can.
Yes, in the last few moments, we have learned that the British passenger who was killed on board is a 73-year-old man, Jeffrey Kitchen, from near Bristol. He and his wife, Linda, had left last night to travel on what neighbours described as a dream holiday, taking in Southeast Asia before heading to Australia. His wife, Linda, was travelling with him at the time. She's been taken to hospital. We understand that the children are preparing to fly to Bangkok, where the flight was diverted following the terrible turbulence incident that happened this afternoon local time in just the sea to the east of Thailand.
Yeah, with 30 people hospitalised, one person, one man sadly killed. It must have been an extraordinary, awful experience inside that aircraft. And one presumes, because there have been accounts, haven't there, of people being thrown out of their seats, their heads striking the ceiling above. They simply were not belted in when the turbulence struck very suddenly.
Yes, speaking to witnesses and other passengers who were on the plane, what we understand is that it had been pretty plain flying for most of the journey. There had been some light bumps in the moments before the seatbelt sign was turned on. Now, the cabin crew were preparing to start the breakfast meal service at this point, and as they went to start their duty, checking that passengers had put their seatbelts on, the plane suddenly plummeted thousands of feet out of the sky. Now, this happened moments after the seatbelt sign was on. Some passengers were still fumbling around to put their seatbelt on when the plane fell. Witnesses said that those who didn't have their seatbelt on at the time were propelled as far as the overhead luggage bin. Footage online shows pools of blood, cabin crew with scars on the back of their head, and passengers with nosebleeds.
All right, Ben.